Hi everyone, I hope you're doing very well. My name is Juan and welcome back to another book review. So today we're going to talk about the great novel Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by the American writer Jonathan Safran Foer. And if you appreciate my reviews and would like to show your support, please give this review a like and subscribe to my channel. That way this video will get to more people who might also enjoy it. Thanks. Okay, so let's talk about Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, which was first published in 2005, and that makes it a very recent novel for my standards, okay? And the first thing I want to say about this novel is that I am surprised that I liked it as much as I did. Why? Because I don't usually like stories whose main characters are children, particularly not precocious children. And the protagonist of this novel, Oscar, is a precocious child, okay? Also, I want to say that if I had known that this novel was set in the aftermath of 9/11 and dealt with that so much, I probably would not have picked it up. But in this case, I actually knew very little about the novel going in. I had no idea what the novel was about. I just found out as I read along, and surprisingly, I really liked it. I don't know how I would feel about this novel if I read it again. Maybe my mood at the time when I read it played a part. I don't know about you, but I think my reaction to reading fiction sometimes depends on my mood, more so than I would like. So perhaps it was the case of the right novel at the right time. I have the feeling that Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close would be a divisive novel, one of those love it or hate it novels, but you'll have to tell me in the comment section how you feel about it, okay? I am not sure why I read this novel either. I know that I had read Safran Foer's first novel, Everything is Illuminated, years before, which I quite enjoyed, so I guess I was curious to read more from him. Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close is the story of a 9-year-old boy, Oscar, whose world has become unstable after his father is killed during the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York City, okay? Oscar tries to cope with his anxiety in different ways. He is very smart and, as I said, precocious. Throughout the novel, he befriends much older people, okay? Because he's so precocious, all his friends are really old. There is a central mystery concerning a key that he thinks belonged to his father. Oscar goes on a quest to find out what that key unlocks. There is also a parallel storyline about Oscar's grandfather, and at a given point, both storylines meet. In a way, this novel is a coming-of-age story, although Oscar is a bit too young for that, I think, but he does mature in the novel. There is a lot Oscar doesn't know. Some of his assumptions are wrong because adults have lied to him, not with any evil intent, but just because most adults lie to children to protect them. There is a lot of ambiguity in this novel. Things are not clear, largely because the perspective is that of a child. I usually wouldn't be drawn to that, but because Oscar is so precocious, it kind of works, even if you have to suspend your disbelief at times. For example, I think Oscar seems too autonomous for a child his age, even one who lives in a big city, and I do tend to think that children who live in big cities are more precocious than those who live in the country or smaller towns. But still, Oscar seems way too mature at times for my liking. Having said that, Oscar connects us to that feeling that I am sure many of us had when we were children and life was a bit of a mystery to us. We didn't understand many things and we thought that there was more to what adults were prepared to tell us. Also, it is important to bear in mind that Oscar is grieving the death of his dad, and I think this novel chronicles that very specific grieving process. But the way Oscar grieves is not morose, he is angry, and he doesn't sit around and mope. Instead, he goes on an adventure of sorts to try to solve a mystery. I'll talk more about the mystery later when we reach the part of the review with spoilers, but don't worry, I will let you know when we get there in case you want to avoid spoilers. Anyway, I also like what this novel has to say about family, family relations, and friendship. There's a whole backstory about Oscar's grandfather, but also how Oscar then relates to other people, particularly his eccentric 103-year-old neighbor, Mr. Black. Something I liked about this novel is how the main characters are either very old or very young, two age groups that are not very often written about, particularly not together. And I'm talking about literary fiction, obviously. And despite, my issues with Oscar's age and his precociousness, I like the way Safran Foer writes about anger. Oscar is an angry kid. He's so young that his mom doesn't know how to deal with his anger, How do you deal with an angry 9-year-old, particularly when you know he's kind of right to be angry? Oscar himself works his way through his anger issues in this novel, but be prepared for a complex novel whose narrative is not linear. Do not expect a cute story about a child solving a mystery, or you will be sorely disappointed. So I think I would recommend Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close to readers interested in American postmodern literature, but not to those of you who might read for plot primarily and always expect something straightforward, because that's not what you're gonna get. And well, I think this is all I can say about the incredible novel Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close without spoiling it for people who have not read it yet. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to summarize the plot and talk about Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close in more detail, and there will be some spoilers. So you have been warned, you know, if you don't want to hear any spoilers from me about this novel, about Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, you should stop watching this video right about now, and I will see you again very soon, I hope, for another video. Okay, for those of you who are still here, I'm now going to summarize the plot and share more thoughts I had on Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. The protagonist is a 9-year-old boy named Oscar Schell. Oscar's father died in 9/11 during the terrorist attacks in New York City. Before dying, Oscar's father phoned the home number and left some messages, but only Oscar knows this. Oscar has been sad and angry since his dad was killed. His dad's body was never recovered, so they had to bury an empty casket. Oscar is also angry at his mom because she is now seeing a man named Ron, and Oscar is worried that she might have moved on already. Oscar is an anxious kid, but he comes up with his own imaginative coping strategies. So one day, Oscar finds a vase in his dad's old closet. The vase is on the top shelf, and when Oscar tries to retrieve it, he drops it and breaks it. There is an envelope inside the vase with the word black written on it, and there is a key in the envelope. Oscar wants to find out what lock this key opens, so he sets up to visit everyone named Black who lives in New York City. While Oscar is doing his research, there is another storyline in the novel concerning his grandparents. This storyline is developed through letters from Oscar's grandparents, from both his grandparents. We find out that Oscar's grandfather, Thomas, stopped speaking soon after coming to America because of the grief he felt after the death of the person he loved, a woman named Anna who died in the bombing of Dresden during World War II. So, okay, you can see the theme of grief here. Anyway, so Thomas married Anna's sister, but there are two versions of this story. So Thomas claims that he met Oscar's grandmother in a bakery, but she says that Thomas asked her to pose for him because he wanted to create a sculpture that looked like Anna. They started to meet daily, according to her, for the posing sessions, and one thing led to another, and one day they had sex, and after that, she proposed to him. She then gets pregnant, and Thomas goes to Dresden. He has decided that he doesn't want to live anymore, so he goes back to Germany. Now we go back to Oscar's storyline and his search. So Oscar meets an epidemiologist named Abby Black who lives in Greenwich Village. She says that she doesn't know anything about the key, but Oscar suspects that she knows more that she's letting on. More on that later. However, he goes on with his search. Eventually, Oscar meets a 103-year-old man named Mr. Black who lives in his building. Mr. Black doesn't know anything about the key. He's an eccentric person. He is wise, but hasn't left his apartment since his wife died 23 years ago. He's also hard of hearing and had turned off his hearing aid years before. However, he lets Oscar turn it back on so they can have a conversation. So after their first meeting, Mr. Black and Oscar begin to hang out together a lot, and they even go out as part of Oscar's search. So Mr. Black decides to help out Oscar. However, after they meet a woman named Ruth Black who lives in the Empire State Building, Mr. Black says that he won't help Oscar anymore. And of course, this leaves the poor kid devastated. We then go back to the other storyline. Thomas comes back to New York from Dresden after 9/11 because he has now decided to live again. So Oscar's grandma lets him stay in the guest room, but only with the condition that he never meets Oscar and even lets him know he's there. So one day, Thomas sees Oscar from afar and begins to follow him. Mr. Black realizes that Thomas has been following them, so he confronts him. But Thomas explains that he's Oscar's grandfather, to which Mr. Black replies that Thomas should be the one really hanging out with Oscar and not him. One day, Oscar sees Thomas in Grandma's apartment, but assumes that he's just a renter. Oscar tells Thomas about the key and his dad's phone calls on 9/11 and even plays the message he left on the answering machine that day. Later, Thomas and Oscar bury the letters Thomas had sent his son in his grave. Then Thomas leaves for the airport. He wants to go back to Germany, but Grandma follows him and stops him from leaving. When Oscar meets Thomas again later, he realizes that there is a message that no one has listened to in their answering machine. The message is in fact from months ago. It turns out that that message is from Abby Black. She had called because she does have some information about the key. So Oscar goes to see her. Abby tells him that the key belongs to her ex-husband William. And Oscar finds out that his mother has known all along that he was tracking down every New Yorker named Black, and she has been phoning everyone in advance to warn them that Oscar would visit them. Oscar then goes to see Abby's ex-husband William at his office. William tells him that the key is for a safety deposit box that belongs to him. What happened is very simple. William sold the vase to Oscar's dad without realizing that the key was inside. Oscar is disappointed by this. He now wants to dig up his father's grave, but he doesn't, okay? Later, he looks at some photographs he has from 9/11 showing a man falling from one of the towers, but he orders the pictures in such a way that the man seems to be floating in the air. Oscar imagines the last night he spent with his father, but plays it in reverse, and that is the end of the novel. So the whole mystery about the key turns out to be a red herring, which is why I try to warn people in the non-spoilery part of the review not to expect something straightforward. This novel is not a mystery or detective fiction, and I suspect that readers who expect it to be that will be disappointed when they find out that the key Oscar finds in a vase in his dad's closet just has nothing to do with him or with the story, okay? It's just a narrative device. Some readers might find this novel too sentimental as well, and I think I would tend to agree with that, but only in part because the novel actually worked for me when I read it. Okay, if you have read Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below so we can talk about it. And if you haven't read it yet, let me know what you think of my review and if you think you will read the novel now. And of course, as usual, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it with your friends on social media. You can also follow me on Twitter and our Instagram at Bookish Islander so we can talk about books on other platforms too. This is all from me. I hope to see you again very soon for another book review or bookish video. Bye for now.